Hello dear students. Today we are going to start with our unit number 4, that is chapter The Ashes That Made the Trees Bloom. This is a story about an honest and hardworking old couple and their pet dog. The neighbors are troublesome and the dog dies a sad death. The spirit of the dog gives solace and support to his master in unexpected ways. So let us start reading the story. In the good old days of the daimyos were the rich Japanese landowners which used to rule over the whole village in the Japan. At that time, the priority which was given to daimyos was more than what was given to the rulers. Having no children, they loved it as though it were a baby. The old dame made it a cushion of blue crepe. Blue crepe means blue fabric, and at mealtime Muko, for that was its name, would sit on it as snug as any cat, means as comfortable as any cat would sit. The kind people fed the pet with tidbits of fish from their own chopsticks, and all the boiled rice it wanted. Thus treated the dumb creature, loved its protectors, like being with a soul. So here the dog also used to protect and loved his protectors. The old man, being a rice farmer, went daily with hoe or spade into the fields, working hard from morning until O Tento-sama. O Tento-sama is the sun, which we call in Japanese as O Tento-sama, had gone down behind the hills. Every day the dog followed him to work, never once harming the white heron. Heron is a white bird which comes and eats the insects that walked in the footsteps of the old man to pick up the worms. For the old fellow was patient and kind to everything that had life, and often turned up a sword on purpose to give food to the birds. So he always used to turn up, means dug up the sword, that is a pile of the uh, soil which was there in his farm, so that the worms could come out and the heron could eat it. One day the dog came running to him, putting his paws against his legs and motioning with his head to some spot behind. The old man at first thought his pet was only playing and did not mind it, but the dog kept on whining, means crying, and running to and fro for some minutes. Then the old man followed the dog a few yards to a place where the animal began a lively scratching. Thinking it was possibly a buried bone or bit of fish, the old man stuck his hoe in the earth, when lo! a pile of gold gleamed, means shined, before him. Thus in an hour the old couple were made rich. The good souls bought a piece of land, made a feast for their friends, and gave plentifully to their poor neighbors. As for the dog, they petted him till they nearly smothered him with kindness, means killed him with kindness. Now in the same village there lived a wicked old man and his wife, not a bit sensitive and kind, who had always kicked and scolded all dogs whenever any passed their house. Hearing of their neighbor's good luck, they coaxed the dog into their garden and set before him bits of fish and other dainties, hoping he would find treasure for them. But the dog, being afraid of the cruel pair, would neither eat nor move. Then they dragged him out of doors, taking a spade and hoe with them. No sooner had the dog got near a pine tree growing in the garden than he began to paw and scratch the ground, as if a mighty treasure lay beneath. "Quick, wife, hand me the spade and hoe," cried the greedy old fool, as he danced with joy. Then the covetous old fellow, with the spade, and the old crone, with the hoe, began to dig. Crone means the wife. But there was nothing but a dead kitten, the smell of which made them drop their tools and shut their noses. Furious at the dog, the old man kicked and beat him to death, and the old woman finished the work by nearly chopping off his head with the sharp hoe. Then they flung him into the hole and heaped the earth over his carcass, that is, a dead body. The owner of the dog heard of the death of his pet, and, mourning for him as if he had been his own child, went at night under the pine tree. He set up some bamboo tubes in the ground, such as are used before tombs, in which he put fresh flowers. Then he laid a cup of water and a tray of food on the grave, and burned several costly sticks of incense. He mourned a great while over his pet, calling him many dear names, as if he were alive. That night the spirit of the dog appeared to him in a dream and said, "Cut down the pine tree over my grave, and make from it a mortar for your rice pastry, and a mill for your bean sauce." Now the old man chopped the tree, and cut out of the middle of the trunk a section which was about 2 feet long. Now with a great labour, partly by fire and partly by chisel, he scraped a hollow place inside that log of the wood, as big as a small bowl. Then he made a long-handled hammer of wood, which is the pestle which was used for pounding the rice in the mortar. As the New Year's time drew near, he wished to make rice pastry. When the rice was all boiled, Granny put into mortar. The old man lifted his hammer to pound the mass into the dough. Now, as the blows were falling heavy on the mass and fast until the pastry was all ready for baking, suddenly the whole mass of that dough turned into the heap of gold coins. Now the old woman took the hand mill and filling it with beans began to grind, and the gold started to drop like the rain. So from both the gold emerged, that was either from the dough or either from the beans. Meanwhile, the envious, means the jealous neighbors, peeped in at the window. Peeped in means stared in the window from the window when the boiled beans were being ground. "Goody me," cried the old hag, as she saw each dripping of sauce turning into yellow gold, until in a few minutes the tub under the mill was full of a shining mass of gold. So the old people were rich again. The next day the stingy, means miserly, and the wicked neighbor came to their home, and then they borrowed the mortar and the magic mill. They thought that they would also get the pile of gold coins from that machine. They filled one with boiled rice and the other with the beans, and then the gold and then after that old man started to pound and the woman began to grind. But at the first blow and turn, the paste and the sauce, instead of turning into the heap of gold coins, turned into a foul mass of worms. Still more angry at this, they chopped both the mill and the mortar and then used it as firewood. Not long after that the good old man dreamed again, and the spirit of the dog spoke to him, telling him how the wicked couple had burnt the mill made from the pine tree. Now the dog advised the old man to take the ash of the mill and sprinkle them on the withered trees, and then they will bloom again. Now what do you think? From where will the old man get those ashes? Definitely from the old man's house, the covetous couple's house. The old man awoke and went at once to his wicked neighbor's house, where he found the miserable old couple sitting at the edge of their square fireplace in the middle of the floor, smoking and spinning. From time to time they warmed their hands and their feet from the blaze of some bits of the mill, while behind them lay a pile of the broken pieces. That broken pieces were of the mortar. The good old man humbly asked for the ashes, though the covetous couple turned up their noses, means they were treating him with contempt, and also they exclaimed him to be a thief, but later they let him fill his basket with the ashes. On coming home, the old man took his wife into the garden. It being the winter season, their favorite tree, that was the cherry tree, was bare, because in the winter seasons the cherry trees do not have any leaves. As soon as the old man sprinkled those ashes over those cherry trees, it sprouted blossoms until it became a cloud of pink blossoms which perfumed the air. This news filled up the entire village, and everyone ran out of their homes to see the wonder. The covetous old couple also heard the same news, and gathering up the remaining ashes of the mill, kept them to make withered trees bloom. The kind old man, hearing that his lord, the Demo, was to pass along the high road near the village, set out to see him, taking his basket of the ashes. Now what he did was, as the train approached, he climbed into an old cherry or withered cherry tree which was standing the wayside. Now in the days of daimyos, it was the custom that wherever their lord passed by, all of the people had to shut up their high windows. Even they pasted them fast with a slip of paper, that is their windows, so that the crime of impertinence of looking down on their lordship should not be done. This is a heinous crime for them. All the people along the road would fall upon their hands and knees and remain prostrate, that is, lying on the ground face downward, until the procession passed by. The train drew near. One tall, competent man marched ahead, crying out to the people by the way, "Get down on your knees, get down on your knees." And everyone kneeled down while the procession was passing. Suddenly, the leader of the van caught the sight of the aged man up in the tree. He was about to call out to him in an angry tone, but seeing that he was such an old fellow, he let him pass. So when the Daimyo's palanquin drew near, the old man, taking a pinch of ashes from his basket, scattered it over the tree. In a moment it burst into blossom. The delighted Daimyo ordered the train to be stopped and got out to see the wonder. Calling the old man to him, he thanked him and ordered presents like of silk robes, sponge cakes, fans, and other rewards which were to be given to him. He even invited him to his castle. So the old man went gleefully home to share this joy with his dear old wife. But when the greedy neighbor heard of it, he also took some magic ashes and went out on the highway. He waited until a Daimyo's train came along, and instead of kneeling down, he also climbed the withered cherry tree. Now, when the Daimyo himself was almost under the tree, he threw a handful of ashes over the withered tree. But instead of converting into blossoms, the whole dust blew in the noses and the eyes of Daimyo and his wife. Such sneezing and choking, it spoiled all the pomp and the dignity of the procession. The man whose business it was to cry, "Get down on your knees," seized the old fool by the collar, dragged him from the tree, and tumbled him and his ash basket into the ditch by the road. Then beating him soundly, he left him for dead. Thus the wicked old man died in mud, but the kind friend of the dog dwelt in peace and plenty, and both he and his wife lived to a green old age. Written by William Elliot Griffiths.